Hi guys, Dr. Aman Arora from Arora Medical Education. Slightly different video to our usual teaching videos. Some of you guys may know, 22nd of June, today's anniversary of my father's passing. Dr. Mahesh Kumar Arora died on the 22nd of June 2021. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to do a quick video on 5 really important things that I learned from my father that have helped me as a clinician firstly, but also running the company that we run, Arora Medical Education, and thirdly in life in general as well. So I thought it was a great opportunity for me to try and reflect back on some of those things that I learned from him, whether consciously or subconsciously, and try and put them into this short video. So my father, for those who don't know, did his MBBS, his medical degree in Patiala in Punjab in India. And some of you guys may know of Patiala. He came to the UK in 1979, trained as a GP, worked as a GP, as an international medical graduate. He came across, worked as a GP for the majority of his clinical career in the NHS, and then for the last probably 5 or 6 years he worked in psychiatry as a specialist doctor in psychiatry in Leicester. And obviously I saw a lot of phases of his life, and I saw a lot of the struggles that he had and a lot of the challenges that he overcame. And I'm going to talk about 5 key things that I learned that hopefully I try and use in my own day-to-day life and in my own career progression. So let's go. So the first thing I learned from my father is the importance of taking risks, but also some of the possible huge benefits that you get from taking risks, whether it comes to your career or whether it comes to your life. So when I think back to my father, he came to the UK in 1979 as an international medical graduate doctor, and we teach IMG doctors who are coming to the UK now, and I see all the troubles and the challenges that people have in these days. But when I think back to him coming across in 1979, they didn't come from a very rich background. Every decision had to be made very carefully. That decision to jump from India to UK without knowing anybody in the UK, without really knowing anything about the system, and going to a brand new country was a huge risk that could have backfired. It could have gone many different ways, and it could have left him with a lot of problems. And I know he had some challenges like all people who came across in those days. So that was a huge risk that he took. Secondly, he went to a town, an area of the UK that not many people knew. He went to Nuneaton and he did his GP training. For those of you guys know, Nuneaton is a town in the West Midlands, but most people who came across from abroad in those days, wanted to go to London or Birmingham or Manchester, where people traditionally went when they came for abroad. But he took a massive risk in going to a place where there weren't many Asian doctors or Asian people at all. He just didn't know the area at all, and he kind of set up camp and did his training and became a GP and established himself in the Nuneaton area. So that was a huge risk. And a third risk that he did that I always remember was that he built a GP surgery from scratch. This is in the 90s. A lot of people said to him, don't do that, it's got a lot of risks, and of course it did cause a few problems and challenges for him as he did it, but that was a huge risk that he took, and he kind of did a calculation of pros and cons, and a lot of people were telling him not to do it, but he went in and took that risk. Now I've certainly tried to pick that up. I've tried to take a few risks in my life, because if you don't take risks, then sometimes, certainly for me, life can become a bit stagnant, and you may get to the end of your life and think, well, should I have done this, or could I have done this, and what if I did this? And I think the importance of taking that risk and looking at what the potential is in terms of what you can achieve in your life is something that I certainly got from my father. And looking back, he certainly took some big risks, and I think hopefully the benefits of that rubbed off on myself as well. So that's the first thing I picked up from my father, the importance of taking risks in both career but also in life as well. The second really important thing that I picked up from my father was the importance of following your gut instinct, but also following your passion as well. Now, my father, when he came across from India in 1979, he had thinkings like many doctors who came to the UK at that point, that I want to become a consultant in XYZ field, and things didn't work out, and he ended up being a GP, which he loved later on in his life, but that wasn't his first plan. His first passion was psychiatry. He loved the mind, he loved psychology, he loved understanding how you can influence the mind in a positive way, and that was always his kind of passion. And even though he did general practice for the majority of his NHS career, his gut feeling always told him that one day I want to do psychiatry, and his passion was telling him, one day maybe I would like to do some psychiatry. So as his NHS career started to come to a close from a GP point of view, for the last 4 to 5 years, he almost retrained himself to work in psychiatry, and he spent a lot of time working in Leicester as a specialty doctor in psychiatry. He did a lot of work on drugs and addiction, and helped lots of people, and that was his passion, and that was his initial gut feeling that that's what he wanted to do. He ended up doing general practice for many different reasons, but he never lost that feeling of I've got to follow what I love, and eventually he got to do that bit. And that happened a little bit with myself. My passion was medical education, and I probably followed my gut instinct and followed my passion a little bit earlier than he did, but obviously I had a few more advantages than he wouldn't have had in my career. But that was never lost on me. The fact that his passion was there, his gut feeling was there, even though he had to delay it a little bit, eventually he went back to what he loved, and his final 4 or 5 years in the NHS was certainly doing something that he had a strong passion to do. So the second thing I took away from my father is the importance of recognizing what your gut feeling says, recognizing what your passion says, and following it, even if it's not exactly at the point that you think you might be doing it in the first place. The third thing I learned from my father, or probably witnessed more actually from my father, is that busyness is all about perspective. Now, when I think back to the average day of my father, it was extremely busy. So in the morning it was all about getting us ready for school and things, and obviously most parents have that busyness. But then he used to run two GP surgeries in Nuneaton, and he used to run 4 clinics in a day. So he used to run a clinic in one surgery and then drive to another surgery and do a second clinic there, and then he had 5 or 6 home visits to do, and then he went back to the first surgery and did an afternoon clinic there, and then did another afternoon clinic in the second surgery and drove between sites, and then he had more home visits, and then he often went and did on-calls, and then he had clinical meetings that had to be done, and business meetings for the practice, and then he still managed to fit in time to do things like hobbies and family stuff as well around that. So he was an extremely busy person, yet for him busyness was all about perspective. So everyone kind of said to him, look, how do you do so much, and how do you manage 2 surgeries, and how do you do all of this, and blah blah blah. But for him, he didn't really see it as something extraordinary. He just did it. He just yes, he was constant, yes, he was non-stop, yes, he was running from one place to another, but for him, he didn't feel overwhelmed by busyness. He just put it in perspective and thought that there's 24 hours in a day, and even if I'm working a certain percentage, I still have the rest of the hours to do other things. And I think I've picked that up of him. Like, I do a lot of stuff, and we juggle a lot of things, and we balance a lot of things. And people do say to us, how do you do so much? And how are you always, responding and replying and on social media and teaching and running courses, etc., creating content, creating, new videos and things. And I think it's just that perspective I got from my father, that busyness is a perspective to some extent. And as long as you organize things properly, you can actually achieve probably more than you think you're able to achieve if you sit down and try and work it out on a blank sheet of paper. So I certainly got that from my father. Busyness is a perspective, and you can probably achieve more in a day than we initially think that we can. The fourth really important thing I picked up from my father was the importance and value of strong networking. My dad was great at this. He would meet anybody and everybody and fit in and talk to them and ask them questions, and he built up a really strong network of people that could help when needed, that he could turn to when necessary, that no doubt helped me and probably my sister in their careers as well, in terms of connections and getting to know people and getting work experience and all that kind of stuff. But he used to go to a lot of different meetings. I remember as a child, whether it be BMA, he got quite involved with the LMC, the local medical committee. He got very involved in the IMA, the Indian Medical Association. He got very involved in his local GP networks, and there was some stages where he was very heavily involved in politics as well, both in the UK and back in India. So his network was huge when I think about it, and far bigger than my network. But I recognize the importance of getting out there, meeting people, finding out what they do, explaining what he did, and the value that you get and the richness that you get from learning off others, being able to help them, but also having help when it's necessary for you. So I certainly picked up the importance of networking from my father, and hopefully it's something that I'll continue to do for many, many years to come. And the fifth thing, and probably the most important thing that I picked up from my father, is the importance of remembering to enjoy life and do things that you enjoy as an individual. Of course, my father did things for our enjoyment, took us to things and did things because we as kids enjoyed them. But he also made sure that he found time for his own enjoyment as well. So one of his passions was flying, for example. And he, I think he must have been in his early 50s maybe, he basically decided that, look, I've got this passion and I want to learn how to fly, and he'd been thinking about this for many years. So he just kind of researched around and booked some flying lessons and eventually bought his own plane. And everyone was thinking, how are you doing all of this? But that was his passion, and he never forgot the importance of doing things that you enjoy, because if you do that and give yourself your own space yourself, you're so much more value to the other people that are around you. And I think that was a really important thing. He had a passion for antiques, so every weekend he would go around to the local antique shops and find out what's come in and what's new, and our whole house was full of antiques. And for anyone who came to our house when we were younger, there was just so many things that were bought from these kind of antique shops. But that was his passion, and he realized that that little bit of mind freedom on a weekend after a busy week, that little hour that he'd spend in these antique shops, was something that was really important for him, and probably looking back helped him to not burn out. There's a lot of talk at the moment about well-being and taking that time for yourself and burnout and all that kind of stuff, and I think that he recognized that from the beginning, and certainly took time to enjoy things, not just as part of a family, but also for himself as well. And that's something I think is really important in this day and age, when things are so crazy and so busy and so hectic. That time to yourself is key, and I think I learned that for sure from watching my father. So 5 really important things that I learned from my father. Like I said, today is the anniversary of his passing away, 22nd of June, and it was nice to reflect on those 5 really important things that I witnessed him doing throughout his career. Number 1, taking risks and the importance of doing so. Number 2, following your gut and following your passion. Number 3, put busyness into perspective. Number 4, the importance and the power of networking. And number 5, ultimately, the importance of taking time to enjoy the things that you have a passion for. And these 5 things hopefully have helped guide me, as well as many other things that I learned from my father over the time. And I hope it's helped you if you're watching up to this point. So once again, a very small tribute to my father, Dr. Mahesh Kumar Arora, who passed away on the 22nd of June 2021. Hopefully I'll watch this video myself many times in the future to remind me of some of those things that I learned from him, but hopefully it's been of some value for you as well. Take care, have an amazing day.